let's talk e-bikes. As you've probably noticed, they're kind of a thing, kind of a hard to ignore thing, because every day in Colorado and across the country, more and more people are choosing e-bikes to get to work, to run errands, to take their kids to school, and even to deliver goods. In fact, in Colorado, e-bikes are such a big thing that Governor Polis declared September 21st as official Colorado e-bike day. Yeah. We're celebrating that e-bikes replace car trips, which decreases the impact transportation has on both the climate and on our pocketbooks. They're an option for many people who couldn't otherwise ride a bike, and they're simply a joy to ride. As Keith Reed from Keith's Bike Blog put it, e-bikes are the lowest hanging fruit to making the world a better place. I couldn't agree more. And e-bikes aren't just making the world a better place, they're improving the everyday lives of people who ride them. Today, we're excited to debut a short video produced in partnership with Active Towns. We captured the stories of 9 Colorado e-bike riders, and we're excited to debut the film. And technology transitioning is not always my best, so let's hopefully get this going. And here we go.
From city streets to regional trails, it's hard to ignore the rise of e-bikes. Colorado is proud to lead the nation in investments to make e-bikes more accessible for people and businesses who want healthy, climate-friendly transportation. Bicycle Colorado worked with state and local agencies to help develop programs like the Denver Climate Action Office program that will distribute 4,500 bikes this year, and the Colorado Energy Office program upcoming that will distribute $12 million in e-bike rebates. Let's learn how some of those investments are making a difference for Coloradans.
My name is Frida Mitchell. I live in Denver, Colorado, and I love my e-bike.
My name is Chris. I live in Southwest Denver, and I ride an e-cargo bike. Last year, my commute went from 6 miles to 20 miles, and this really makes it easy to ride in and commute every day.
My name's Jamie. I'm the program director at Denver Food Rescue, and today I'm riding our Yuba Supercargo electric bike, which we use for moving food around the Denver metro area.
Yo soy Julie González y es un honor y placer ser dueña de esta bicicleta electrónica que se llama Cereza.
My name is Darnell Robinson. I work at Sprouts Farmers Market retail. I work in the dairy department, and this is my e-bike.
My name's Alex. I ride a Tern HSD e-cargo bike.
My name is Strother Gaines. The pronouns are he, him. I ride a REI Co-op e-bike.
My name is Matt. My daughter and I are able to ride to school every morning, and I pick her up every day.
My name's Rachel, and I ride a Class 3 V-Volt that I affectionately have named the Martian Lander.
So we like to go to school downtown, pick my son up, and then we go back home. But we also like to take the bike. We start exploring different playgrounds in the neighborhoods. He loves to go to Target. We go to the grocery store.
I use the e-bike every day. The only days I wouldn't use it if the weather is really bad.
I like to ride to work, from work, really just making small errands as I make my way through the day.
Our volunteers move food mainly using bicycles with attached trailers. Every weekend, our volunteers ride hundreds of miles with these bikes.
I work 2.5 miles from my home. I live on the north side of Denver. I work at the state capitol. I'm a state senator. And to be able to actually ride my e-bike, and it's actually faster to get there on my e-bike than it is for me to drive in.
Some of the places that I ride to are the Auraria campus every morning, to the grocery store, and then just cruising around. Honestly, I just ride. In the 5 weeks I've been riding, I've put 800 miles on it.
My hope right now is to commute at least 2 out of 4 days a week to school.
I ride it to go to work, run errands, and just to get around my town. I love it.
Stay safe, wear your helmet, learn your turn signals with your hands, keep your lights on in the early mornings and the late at nights. We still follow some traffic laws, so look up on that and you'll have a good time.
The weight loss. I lost 20 pounds, so I love the e-bike. Get on the bike, you will lose 20 pounds because I did it, and you'll love it, you'll love it.
If I can ride my bike, it changes my whole mood and outlook for the day.
You'll find that you just get to ride more, and you'll enjoy riding more, and people will look at you and wish they were riding an e-bike too.
We got a $900 rebate, and that was just enough to make me pull the trigger.
Yes, it saves me so much money. We're talking thousands of dollars. If I didn't have the e-bike, I'd most likely be paying upwards of $20 to $30 on Uber or Lyft, RTD, just to get from one place to another.
That $900 made it from, well, maybe I could do this down the road to, yeah, I could do this today.
These are just a few of the stories about how e-bikes can change how Coloradans get around. Using e-bikes for everyday trips reduces the number of cars on the road and reduces our greenhouse gas emission. Bicycle Colorado is encouraging partnerships between community advocates and local governments to help make e-bikes more accessible. Let's work together to get more people on e-bikes.
Awesome. I don't know about you, but that was pretty electrifying. Huge thank you to John Zimmerman with Active Towns and to our amazing e-bike storytellers. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator and familiar face from the video, Alex Simon. Alex is a public health advocate with CoPIRG, where she leads campaigns to promote a healthier, cleaner, and safer world with a focus on transportation electrification, clean water access, and kids' public health issues. As you just learned, Alex can be spotted riding her electric cargo bike around town, often accompanied by her adorable son and her dog. Alex, happy to hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And I'd like to go ahead and invite our panelists to go ahead and turn your videos on and join us. And thank you so much to everyone across the country who is joining us today. We at CoPIRG know that electric bikes are an important way to offer cleaner and healthier transportation options to people. And I'm thrilled to have a panel today that can speak directly to state and local strategies for increasing access to e-bikes, as well as the direct impact they're having on their riders. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce our panelists, starting with Will Torr. In 2019, Will was appointed Executive Director of the Colorado Energy Office by Governor Jared Polis. In this role, he helped coordinate the development and implementation of the state's greenhouse gas reduction plan, which is an action plan to achieve the state goal of a 90% reduction in greenhouse gases from 2005 levels by 2050. Previously, Will has served as mayor of Boulder, Boulder County Commissioner, Transportation Program Director at the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, as well as the chair of the Denver Regional Council of Governments. Glad you could join us today, Will. Our next panelist is Elizabeth Babcock. Liz is the Deputy Director of the Denver's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, Resiliency, and is an avid biker. She oversees a $40 million climate protection fund, which seeks to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions and increase community resilience, and leads projects on grid decarbonization, electrified mobility, carbon-free buildings, workforce development, environmental justice, climate adaptation, and resilience. Previously, Liz helped Denver win the Mayor's Challenge for an innovative school-based air quality monitoring program and created an income-qualified weatherization program. So glad you're joining us today, Liz. Our next panelist is Dr. Ash Lovell. Ash Lovell. Dr. Ash Lovell. As the Electric Bicycle Policy and Campaign Director, Ash leads People for Bikes electric bicycle policy and campaign initiatives. She leads People for Bikes policy work on electric bikes at the federal, state, and local levels, and is currently helping roll out the industry's electric bicycle battery recycling program. Prior to joining People for Bikes, Ash brought people together around big social and environmental projects, including urban sustainability and landscape conservation for the National Park Service. When she's not out building coalitions, you can find Ash biking her two boys around the Front Range on her electric cargo bike. Glad you're here today, Ash. We'll also be joined by Peep Van Heuven. Peep is the Government Relations Director for Bicycle Colorado and leads statewide efforts to improve bike infrastructure, policy, and access, including passing road safety laws like the Colorado Safety Stop and Vulnerable User and Bike Lane bills. She formed the Denver Streets Partnership in 2016 to help advance multimodal advocacy, helped launch one of the nation's first bike sharing programs, and the installation of the city's first multi-block protected bike lane. Prior to her transportation advocacy work, Peep worked as a nonprofit leader in environmental stewardship and STEM education, and as an NCAA athletic administrator and college coach. Thanks for joining us, Peep. And our final panelist is Darnell Robinson. Darnell lives in the Park Hill neighborhood of Denver and works at Sprouts Market. You'll recognize him from the video. He's one of the initial 13 participants in the Colorado Can Do mini pilot opportunity administered by the Colorado Energy Office in 2020 to help essential workers solve a transportation need. All participants reported using their e-bikes at least 3 times a week, and some, like Darnell, continue to use it every day. So glad you could join us, Darnell. So as we get started, I'd like to invite each panelist to answer one question, which is, at this moment in time, what is the opportunity e-bikes are creating, or what problem can they solve? Will, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, happy to. I think from the state perspective, we see e-bikes as a really elegant approach to solving part of our transportation pollution problem. Transportation is now the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the state and is a major source of the nitrogen oxide pollution that contributes to our ozone problem in the Denver area and the Northern Front Range. And we know that e-bikes are a great tool for, giving people opportunity to get around in a way that's not only fun and healthy, but we know from research really helps to replace car trips with essentially zero emission e-bike trips. And so we really see it as a very powerful tool going forward, and one that I think we're just at the very beginning of a major transition to e-bikes.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. Ash, please feel free to respond next. What kind of problem do you think e-bikes are helping us solve right now?
So many problems. As the e-bike director for People for Bikes, I get to talk about this every day. I'll keep my answers short, but if anyone wants to talk about this at length, I'm happy to. I think the health issue with electric bicycles is a really great one. We know that electric bicycles help people ride farther and sometimes faster, but what we also know is that they keep people riding more often than you do with traditional bicycles. So as we think about, getting people to remain active, both in terms of physical health, but also mental health, emotional health. How do we think about how electric bicycles can, while decongesting our streets, improving our air quality, getting people out of cars, how they can also help with kind of all of the health challenges that we're seeing as well?
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ash. Darnell, would you like to respond next? What problem do you feel e-bikes are helping solve, or what doors are they opening for riders like yourself?
I think they're opening more motivation. They'll go outside much more and not have to think about getting on a 4-wheel car. It gives special travel out there. Like whatever the distance they can go, they can be motivated to go even further, see better sights, just be wowed by nature and other friendly cyclists, e-bike or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've really enjoyed being outside more on my bike. Liz, what about you? What pressing problem do you feel like e-bikes are positioned to solve?
Well, these were all great answers. I love riding my e-bike around. I think for me, and what I've seen with a lot of the new users that are adopting e-bikes, is it's filling a gap in our transportation system options, because I know for myself and many others, being able to take your child to preschool, daycare on an e-bike, it's a lot easier to tow them. It's a lot easier to bring them than you could on a acoustic, a regular bike. And it's creating that sort of option that fits in between kind of all the other options that we have out there in the transportation system. So it's meeting a need that people have in a new way. And so I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, awesome. E-bikes are a great way to add another option to our transportation roster. And last but not least, Peep, what would you like to share?
Absolutely, thanks. I think that alongside transit, the e-bike's the ultimate solution to addressing the overuse of car trips in cities, and also that it can solve for local business delivery as well. So We know the majority of trips in cities are 3 miles or less, and 60% of trips are 6 miles or less, and they are both perfect distances for e-bikes. So it's not really, it shouldn't surprise us, I suppose, that they're so popular so fast, or that the global market is looking like it's going to double, I think, by 2027. Because people are just finding e-bikes can really get people where they need to go efficiently for a lot less cost and without the emissions of a car trip. Right now, I see so much potential for e-cargo bikes to improve local delivery options. This is something that's just exciting me lately. It could significantly reduce truck and van traffic in downtowns, and that's good news for bicyclists for a number of reasons. But from research, we know e-cargo bikes can deliver 60% faster than vans. They have generally like a higher average speed. They're not as likely to get caught in traffic. They can be more nimble, and they can drop off about 10 packages an hour instead of the van rate, which is about 6 packages an hour. So that excites me. And I think large delivery companies like FedEx and UPS and Amazon could really break this game wide open. They are starting to test pilot models in different cities. In London, where there are low emission areas, for example, but I think that FedEx is looking at Scotland, and Amazon has run a program in New York, and UPS currently has a pilot in Seattle, for example. So if that happens, of course, we're going to need larger bike lanes, and we're going to need cities that commit to lower speeds and better policies in downtowns, like no turn on red, and commitment to car-free or emission-free zones as well. But that could be a huge game changer. I think the other piece I'll just touch on briefly is accessibility. E-bikes are really creating an accessibility into bicycling that we haven't seen before. It's really popular with seniors for good reason. And other people who just want to be fit and healthy, but then maybe they don't want to do the hills. And I know this is good couples therapy. So I know of a lot of couples out there where one of them wants to be on a bike, one wants to be on an e-bike, and now they're happily able to get out there together, operating at a level where they're both comfortable. And we know that we can get people with MS and Parkinson's and injuries and chronic pain out on bikes too.
Awesome. Thanks, Peep. E-bikes, the couples therapy solution, if you have one takeaway from this. But thank you all so much for your insights on that. It is a really exciting time in the moment of e-bikes here. And so now I'd like to turn the conversation towards federal policy with our expert, Ash, from People for Bikes. Ash, can you give us some examples of how e-bikes are entering the conversation at the national level? And are there any trends or federal programs you can speak to?
Sure thing. E-bikes as climate action are really kind of gaining traction. This is something we've seen a lot of conversations around electric vehicles as climate action. And we, as People for Bikes and a lot of our other advocacy partners, have done a lot of work at the national level and in DC to frame electric bicycles as a similar, if not slightly better, solution to this electrification of our transportation system. We worked so hard to try and get electric bicycle incentives into the Inflation Reduction Act. Didn't happen yet. Doesn't mean we're stopping. Going to continue working on that. What we're seeing as well is this realization that electric bicycle sales are outpacing electric vehicle sales. Electric bicycles are the best-selling electric vehicle in the US. So we're really stoked about how much enthusiasm there is around electric bicycles. And we're working really hard to kind of reframe this understanding of the expense related with an electric bicycle. We know that having these incentive programs is really important. But if you think about replacing car trips with bike trips, that expense, the difference between buying a new electric vehicle versus buying a new electric bike is pretty significant. So we're working a lot on kind of reframing how an electric bicycle can be used. Peep, I loved your comments about decongesting urban centers by using electric cargo bikes. This is something that People for Bikes is also leaning into a lot. We are working with the Urban Freight Lab out of Seattle, the leaders in kind of the academic space on all these potential applications of commercial electric cargo. And we actually have a white paper coming out with them in early next year that I will share broadly. So exciting moves there as well. The other piece of the electric bicycle pie is the recreational piece. So there's e-mountain, for every type of bicycle, there is a type of electric bicycle. There's e-mountain bikes, there's e-cargo bikes, there's e-commuters, e-gravel, all of that. We're also really interested in working with our national level partners on decongesting trailheads. If you live in Colorado, you know that our Front Range trails are extremely congested. How can we use our electric bicycles of all kinds to get to these trailheads, to enjoy this type of thing? This is something that we can do whether we're going to Red Rocks or if we're somewhere, deeper into the mountains, something we're interested in working with our federal partners as well. And my last comment is e-bikes as couples therapy. Yes, please. I actually rode on the back of our electric cargo bike yesterday for a date night and I couldn't stop grinning. If anyone has ever tried this, oh, it's just the best thing ever. So fun. I cede my time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ash. And that was a great overview of some of the local ways, Denver Front Range trailheads up to the national scope of the work you guys at People for Bikes are doing around electric bikes. And so really appreciate that. Let's now turn to Colorado with Peep from Bicycle Colorado. Peep, when did Bicycle Colorado start to see the significance of electric bicycles? Can you tell us a little bit about the first pilot program and the impacts you're seeing from those early rebates?
Sure. So I'm gonna go into the Wayback Machine really briefly. I've been doing this work in bike advocacy since I think 2008, and there have been a few renaissance moments that we've seen in bicycling. E-bikes is the most recent one, but initially we saw in Denver, in particular, biking for transportation get popular when Denver was willing to invest in beginning one of the first large-scale bike sharing programs in the United States. And that sort of instantly made biking for transportation cool. And from that, we began to see people getting out there, the business community, convention goers, grabbing a bike for a short trip in a city. And so we really saw an uptick in biking for transportation and quick trips in the downtown. And then when Denver started to invest in protected bike lanes, beginning with 15th Street in 2015, we saw the numbers for women start to go up. So as Denver invested in safe, protected infrastructure, there were more of the interested but concerned group and more women who were willing to get out there. And kind of at the same time, there was a cultural shift with more seniors moving back to cities and young professionals moving to cities for jobs that didn't want to own a car. So there was another sort of rise in bike ridership for those reasons. And then, of course, in 2020, with the pandemic, there was a worldwide bike boom. And everybody either discovered or rediscovered biking for different reasons. The streets were quieter and bikes are a great sort of physical and mental health boost that a lot of people turn to. And now we have the e-bike boom, and it is unlike anything I have ever seen in terms of its immediate popular appeal. And people are just finding that e-bikes are a great solution to a host of issues. So that's everything from people who are choosing them specifically because they're more affordable than buying a car, or they don't want to pay for parking, to discovering that you can go twice the distance with less effort. And it's much more of a utility vehicle. It can carry things, kids, groceries. And because it's healthy transportation and it's fun, Frida talked about weight loss in her interview for the video. So it just opens up so many more options to move yourself and your family around within a 3 to 6 mile distance. I personally started to see this difference, I think, at Bike to Work Day last year. And I noticed that there were so many more people riding e-bikes. So I'd say 2021 was the year that Bicycle Colorado really started to think about all the possibilities with e-bikes. I think the second part of your question was about how we got started with the mini pilot. So I'll tell that story really briefly, but we did have the opportunity to meet with Will at the Colorado Energy Office and talk to him a little about how e-bikes could address transportation emissions. And we were really pleased that his office staff came back to us and offered us the opportunity to help work with them on a mini pilot for the state that was rolled out in the fall of 2020. That was part of the Colorado Governor's Can Do Colorado program. It was to support local community recovery during the pandemic. And the goal was to support essential workers and solve a transportation need for them. So the first thing we actually did was reach out to a local community partner, NETC, Northeast Transportation Connections in Northeast Denver, because they have an incredible track record of doing really deep, authentic work in their community to get to get a handle on what are the core community needs and then build programs and supports around that. And fortunately, they've been a leader sort of in the bike space and the mobility space for a long time. So they helped to promote the program and recruit, you know, a really nice, diverse group of participants like Darnell, who were able to come out and take advantage of that first pilot program. And the pilot program offered the participants a free Class 1 e-bike and a bunch of other essentials. So a lock and a helmet and panniers and trainings and a voucher for bike maintenance and things like that. And I'll wrap up by saying the other key partner was NREL, National Renewable Energy Labs here in Colorado. And they had a researcher who helped to develop the measurements and an app to evaluate program impacts and ultimately provide sort of the program reporting. And they did find all the participants were using the bike, replacing single occupancy vehicle trips by about 35% during the measurement time period. And so we knew from that moment that we had found a good thing. And from there, Will and his team really got to work to develop what this could look like on a broader and more statewide level. And I guess I should also, I'll point to Liz too. I was fortunate to be on the Denver Climate Action Task Force that provided the city with a variety of ideas, including in transportation, on how to become more resilient with respect to climate change. And it has been amazing to watch the city of Denver take off with their e-bike program and their EV charging program. I feel like a very proud auntie. So thank you for that work, Liz.
Great. Thank you so much, Peep. That was a really great kind of history and overview of some of the policy work that's gone on around bikes in Colorado. And again, we know Colorado is the leader nationally in public funding for electric bikes, following a $12 million investment from an air quality bill passed earlier this year. So it's really exciting to see both what Colorado has done and the possibilities that are opening up for state residents with that new funding. So as we talk about the topic of electric bikes and air quality, I'd like to invite our next panelist, Will Torr. Will, can you talk a little bit about when the Colorado Energy Office determined that e-bikes could really play a role in being a strategy towards air quality? And what impacts are you hoping to see from the program?
You know, when we began working on e-bikes, it really did come out of the pandemic. And early in the pandemic, we were seeing, you know, all of these impacts on communities. We were seeing public transit service getting cut, and many people during the height of the pandemic being uncomfortable riding public transit. We were very concerned about what that would mean for low-income workers who relied on transit being able to get to work. We were also, you know, at the same time seeing all of the impacts on small businesses and restaurants. And there was really a conversation between our Department of Environmental Health, the Energy Office, and then Shoshana Liu, who runs our Department of Transportation, in which we sort of jointly came up with the idea of doing an e-bike pilot program and doing a Main Street pilot program to support repurposing street space in downtowns from, you know, vehicles to things like restaurants and pedestrian and bicycle use. That has since grown into, you know, a much larger program where, you know, many millions of dollars all across the state are going to community transformations to make spaces more walkable and bikeable and sort of friendly to people. And then was really interesting to see the way that the e-bike, you know, pilot has also led to a much larger program. I think what we immediately saw once we started the program was how much people love e-bikes. You know, we work on a lot of different issues, and I'm not sure that there's anything else that we've worked on that has gotten as much sort of instant and positive community reaction as working on e-bikes. And, you know, that then gave us the sense that, boy, we could do something on a much larger scale than the mini pilot. So we immediately moved to a somewhat larger pilot program that was working with organizations in Pueblo, Fort Collins, Denver, Boulder, and the northern metro area to work with community organizations to help get e-bikes to low-income Coloradans. Coming out of that, we then had the sense of, again, we could be doing something much larger than this. And really sort of two ideas emerged from that. One was building e-bikes into a transportation infrastructure package in 2021, the legislature did a large transportation funding package that included creating 3 new transportation electrification enterprises that are funded by fees on rideshare like Uber and Lyft, and fees on residential delivery like Amazon delivery. And one of those enterprises, the Community Access Enterprise, which is managed by the Energy Office, is focused both on building out electric vehicle charging infrastructure, but also in supporting equitable access to electric vehicles. And we feel like e-bikes are a component of that. So that will actually provide a long-term and growing funding source that we will be able to use for e-bike programs that are serving low-income Coloradans. Then in 2022, Governor Polis proposed a really transformational air quality investment package, overall hundreds of millions of dollars investment in air quality programs. And one of those programs is the e-bike rebate program. So $12 million, of which about $1 to $2 million will be going to sort of growing some of these programs, working with community organizations on low-income e-bike access, and then approximately 10 million of it will be going to rebates to provide low and moderate income Coloradans, easier access to e-bikes. We're in the process of designing that program, and haven't yet set the final rebate amounts, but anticipate that we'll be launching that program early in 2023.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Will. We're grateful for your leadership around electric bicycles and multimodal transportation, and looking forward to seeing that program when it comes out next year. Let's take the conversation about electric bikes and climate change to another one of our local experts, Liz. Liz, can you speak a little bit about how Denver decided that e-bikes could be a valuable strategy to combat climate change? And in particular, if you could talk a little bit about what steps you took to get the program launched in Denver, and any advice you have for cities looking to launch similar programs.
Of course, thanks. Yeah, as Pete mentioned, back in 2020, we launched the Climate Action Task Force. It was amazing to be part of that process and see all the ideas coming from our community. One of which was to actually create the Climate Protection Fund, which the voters then passed later that year. And we were able to start implementing in 2021 using the Climate Protection Fund dollars for programs like this e-bike rebate. We know that it can significantly be a game changer in the transportation space because of the fact that people can go farther. They can replace vehicle trips on an e-bike. It's fun. It meets a lot of different needs, as we've heard. So we knew right away that that was something that we wanted to implement as one of our early action items in terms of getting those dollars out into the community. The other thing about the Climate Protection Fund that the people of Denver passed is that it has an equity mandate. And so we know from the beginning, all of our program design, we're really looking at how do we make this a program that's accessible to everyone, regardless of income. And so we were really kind of trying to figure out how do we do a program design that is as inclusive and accessible as possible. So one of our early steps in the program design was really thinking about an upfront rebate. It really lowers the barrier to in terms of cost. And we have a standard rebate, $400 plus an additional $500 if you pursue purchasing an e-cargo bike. And then our income qualified rebate is $1,200 plus an additional $500 for an e-cargo bike. So the fact that we wanted to do this upfront program design meant, in terms of the rebate, meant that we needed to work really closely with the bike shops. And so one of the other benefits of our program is really fostering a local workforce and a local economy around e-bikes and e-bike repair and service. We wanted to make sure that people had a place where they could go to shop for the bikes, test out the bikes, try on different models and see what works for them, see how they work in person if they're not familiar with them, but also a place where they can go and get access to service if their bike needs a tune-up, repair, if there's any kind of warranty issue, they can go back to that shop, and those things can get handled here locally, which is another great benefit. Plus those dollars are flowing locally in our own community. So I think that is a really important part of our program design. and has been, you know, something that we've really been proud of in terms of how we've launched the program. I would also say that we're learning more and more about how to make our program even more accessible. So thinking about what types of bike models are actually able to be purchased in our bike shops, seeing if there's different types of models that are actually more accessible for people with physical disabilities, looking at different ways that we can make that program design even better into the future. So I think some of our lessons learned include thinking about how we do our sign up. Having an upfront voucher means that it's an incredibly popular program. We budgeted a much smaller amount, I think 250,000 to start, and we kept increasing the budget over the year. I believe now we've given out $3.3 million of vouchers in up to this point this year. And so it's been wildly successful, but then thinking about how we budget and then how we also release those vouchers over time to make sure that it's accessible for people. So we're looking at some redesign for 2023, starting in January, that will make it a little bit easier. I know folks have gone onto our website and sometimes the vouchers are actually gone within minutes. And so that can be a challenge for folks who are trying to log on, you know, get their voucher, claim their spot. And so we're looking at different ways that we can do that in the future. But I think the fact that it's been so successful means that there really is a big demand out there. And I know for anybody who's listening, who's from a local government, you're probably wondering, well, how are you staffing this? How are you doing this work? I know in the past, in many local governments, you know, there might be one sustainability person whose job is kind of across the whole range of sustainability topics. And so I think it all really starts with a community conversation about what resources are needed and what the priorities are. So going back to that Climate Action Task Force, the fact that we had a real open conversation with the community about what are the resources that are necessary to actually do this work is kind of the essential first step, I think, because we wouldn't be able to launch a program like this without the amazing team that we have. Mike Salisbury, Sam Domeyer, Natasha Way, like we couldn't run a program like this unless we had that amazing staff and without the resources of the Climate Protection Fund that the voters gave us. So for local governments that are listening, you know, we're always happy to answer questions here in Denver, but I would say, you know, listen to the community first, listen to what their needs are, do that exploration with your community to understand what their priorities are, and then figure out a way that you can equitably fund that work. And then we will definitely be sharing more information sort of as we get towards the end of this year about the real details of the program design and how we can kind of iterate for next year to make the program even better.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Liz. And, you know, I was a voucher recipient, luckily, because I was very fast on the mouse of the Denver rebate program. And it's been really exciting to see the success of that program so far. So thanks for sharing that. Our last panelist is an electric bike rebate recipient and brings a unique perspective on how electric bikes impacted his day-to-day life. Darnell, can you tell us a little bit about your e-bike story? I'd love to hear kind of how you first heard about the state's program and what motivated you to take the leap and get the e-bike.
Yes, I was told about it from a coworker from mine from the Northeast Transportation Connection, Eric Herbst. He told me about it. He's like, hey, you should try to get into this and get yourself an e-bike. And I was like, I don't know if I'll be qualified to get the e-bike of under that certain amount of wage a year. But I was like already riding a bicycle. So I was like, I don't think they want to give it to me. But I ended up hitting that list. It's like, yeah, here you go. Install the app, use it for 6 months, give us the data, and then the bike is yours to keep. I just gave it a shot, went to the shop to try out the bike, rode down an alley with it just to like get a good feel of it, because I was like, whoa, this is a wild feel from just riding a regular bike from it. And it was amazing. So from then on, I've been riding it to work and back from both my different jobs at the time. One was like 4 miles away. So had a great experience riding back and forth from that, not feeling tired, felt motivated to actually go further. I was like, hey, it's after work, I got energy, I can go somewhere, I can check things out. So yeah, it definitely boosts my motivation. And I think if we can continue onward with the rebate program, I can get some more people into it that wants to ride the e-bikes too, because I wanted to get another friend into it. And he checked him out with the bicycle library from Northeast Transportation Connection. But yeah, I want to try to get him his own personal e-bike so he can ride around, have fun, be motivated to go here and there from his job. Yeah, I really don't have much more to add. Kind of nervous.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I know it's kind of a thrilling feeling. I couldn't believe how fast the bike went when I first got on it.
It was insane. I was like, well, I never went this fast before.
I know, yeah. The fun aspect of it has been a really nice plus side for me as well. What do you have any advice for, like, what would you say to your friend or anyone else who might be like thinking about getting an e-bike but kind of nervous about trying it out?
I would tell them just go for it. They'll give you a little practice. I'll teach them the safety tips that they have to. They'll teach them too. They don't got to be afraid. They already know how to ride a bike. It's not difficult at all. I think the best advice is to know how to lock your bike. If you're going to be away from it for a while, like use the chain rope, use your D-lock, lock your front or back wheel, whichever one has a quick release, whichever's easier to grab. Yeah, you want to keep it nice, lock and secure. Keep your eye on it every hour or so if you don't trust the environment around you. But yeah, just wear your helmet, learn your traffic signals with your hand. Hopefully we can get our vehicle drivers to understand our hand languages when we're doing the turn signals. Sometimes they don't get it, they just think I'm waving at them. It's like, no, I'm trying to make it right. But yeah, they just need to just go for it. If I have the means to tell them where they can go to get an e-bike, I'll let them know. I'll text it to them. I'll send them all the messages, word of mouth. I know I have a couple of coworkers at my job that would be interested in riding some bikes. And I was like, yeah, I'm not too far from work. I don't want to just drive to work and drive back. I could save some gas or something like that. I don't want to walk either. And I was like, yeah, let me tell you about this e-bike program, get you a rebate, and we can get you hooked up.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And also goes to show the power of word of mouth. And, you see your friend doing it, you see another mom at school doing it, and slowly more and more people get comfortable with the idea. And then once you get on it, you're going really fast and you're having a lot of fun. So I think we have a little time now to take some questions from the audience. I have a few questions here, so I'm just kind of reviewing them. We got a couple questions asking about secure parking and, better infrastructure of bike racks and bike parking. Liz, is that something you'd be able to talk to about? What is there anything you guys are doing or knowledge you have about what's going on in Denver around that?
Sure, I'd be happy to take a try at that. Our Department of Transportation and Infrastructure in Denver has been working to implement our goals around building out a safe multimodal transportation infrastructure in Denver. Under the American Cities Climate Challenge that Denver was a part of over the last 3 years, I think they've built out more than 100 miles of protected bike lanes, and we're continuing to do more and more, over time. But of course, transportation infrastructure is costly, and so I think there are limitations around budget in terms of how quickly those transformations can happen. So hopefully that's something that they can continue to do and build on. I also have seen a lot of investment from their team around bike corrals, creating new places for parking for bikes in business districts and areas where people are likely to go and want to be able to bike to. It's been great to see those bike corrals popping up in places all across the city. And in terms of secure bike parking, one of the things that we've built out into our program, we have an RFP that we put out for employers, community-based organizations, other community entities to apply to get funds from the Climate Protection Fund for their own fleet of e-bikes for themselves. And we've indicated in there also that those entities should have a plan for secure bike parking for those e-bikes if they're for use by students, for example, or for employees or others who are using their bike fleet through their organization, having secure bike parking. So it's definitely something that we're aware of and we're continuing to work on and investing dollars in.
Awesome, thanks. And Darnell, I'd love to hear your perspective. Where do you park your bike when you go to work? And do you feel safe parking it there? Have you ever had any issues where you feel like you're worried about the security of your bike?
I had issues with my hybrid bike before I got the e-bike. I know I be parking it outside work on their bike parking bar thing. And like some nights when I be having the closing shifts, some nights I hear from my other coworkers like, man, there's somebody out in that parking lot just eyeing your bike, man. It's oh no. But when I got the e-bike and I park it on the bar at work, I don't have a fear of it getting stolen because I think what they want from it is a component I take out of it, and that's the battery. I use my key, I take out the battery, I take it in there in the work with me, and it just dead weight at that point. But a friend of mine had his bike stolen at the same work spot, but they couldn't break the lock. So what they decided to do is actually take the whole bar out. They took the whole bar and took his bike with them. I was like, oh man. So yeah, I think that put me a little more unease. And I was like, that could happen to me and that wouldn't be good. And most of my other coworkers who do ride their bikes to work, they bring it inside the store and put it in like in the back hallway. But no, they wouldn't. I didn't have that fear because I was like, I took the battery. They don't want the bike. The bike's worthless to them.
Yeah, that's really smart. Will, do you have anything you want to add? Is there anything the state's doing specifically around bike parking, safety and security?
So I don't know that the state is directly working on bike parking, but certainly is on bicycle infrastructure sort of more broadly. And I would say sort of two major places where the state is engaged there. One is I mentioned the Main Streets program that the Department of Transportation runs, which really focuses on working with local communities to provide funding for transforming streets in sort of core parts of communities that have been kind of car-only streets and making them streets that are safer and friendlier for walking, biking, and transit in addition to automobiles. And then the other place where I think we're seeing a lot of funding flowing into sort of making more pedestrian and bicycle friendly streets is through the impacts of the new transportation greenhouse gas pollution standard that the State Transportation Commission adopted in December that set a greenhouse gas budget essentially for the transportation system and requires the metropolitan plans and the statewide plan to show that they're going to meet those greenhouse gas reduction targets. We're just starting to see that play out in practice. Really, the largest impact that we've seen so far is in the Denver metro area, where the Denver Regional Council of Governments has updated their transportation plan and shifted really hundreds of millions of dollars towards making streets more walkable and bikeable, in addition to shifting investment into bus rapid transit.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So we have a few questions about where we can ride e-bikes. Can we use them on off-road trails? Are they allowed in state parks? So I was wondering if, Peep, you could speak a little bit about where e-bikes are allowed and where they're not allowed.
Sure, I'll tee it off and then I think Ash might be able to build on it. But generally, if you have an e-bike, class 1, 2, or 3, your bicycle is a vehicle on the roadway. It's allowed on any public road in Colorado unless it's specifically signed that you can't ride on it. Highways are one example. So you're allowed anywhere on the road system in a bike lane or out of a bike lane. A bike is a bike is a bike, and an e-bike is a bike. It gets a little more exciting when we start talking about multi-use trails, which is currently where most of the conversation is in and around cities. And a lot of communities are still having that conversation. So fortunately here in Denver, you can ride an e-bike on the multi-use trail systems, but that's because advocates like some of the folks on this call got in touch with their council members and got engaged and really worked with Parks and Recreation departments to talk about the need to be able to use those multi-use trails because they're part of the transportation system. And then as we get broader, and this is where I think Ash can bail me out a little bit, You know, on the federal level, it's up to the federal land manager. So it's really, as we get off the multi-use trails and into more sort of just trail systems, it's going to depend on the land manager, and they have the ultimate authority there.
I will dive in now. Pete, you're exactly right. We have one of the best examples of a county that has done a really thoughtful job of introducing e-mountain bikes. Jefferson County here has done a lot of work on the research on, you know, what are the impacts of electric bicycles, both on the social side, like are there any user conflicts? Data says no. Are there any negative trail impacts in terms of the ecology? Data says no. So Jefferson County is a great model for kind of that opening up trail systems to e-bikes. And as the national bicycling advocacy organization, we very much encourage decisions made at the local and regional and state level in terms of, you know, where is it appropriate for e-bikes to be ridden. We have this Model 3 class legislation that has defined what an electric bicycle is in 47 out of 50 states now, actually categorize electric bicycles as bicycles. So yes, exactly. They're bikes in most places. And if you're riding on multi-use trails or on natural surface trails, make sure you check in with the land managers there, and they will help you figure out where it's appropriate to ride.
Awesome. Yeah, a lot of new questions coming up as the e-bikes are getting on the roads and trails. And thank you so much for sharing that valuable perspective. It is 1:57. And so a big thank you to all of our panelists for sharing such valuable insights and perspectives today on electric bikes. I'm really grateful for all of you and everyone in the audience for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel.
Thank you so much, Alex, and our panelists. That was a fantastic conversation. And just really want to thank everyone also who tuned in today. We have people all the way from Oregon to Rochester, New York, joining us today. So clearly, you know, Colorado is doing a lot, but we're also really excited to see what other states are going to be doing as well. Bicycle Colorado really encourages advocates and city officials to work together to support e-bike ridership, both through programs such as the rebates and the Can Do program we heard more about today, but also, as we heard, it's really important to continue investing in building safe places for people to ride, as well as, in particular with e-bikes, making sure that there's safe places for them to park and charge. So it's a rich, complicated conversation. I do want to just make note, there were a lot of questions specifically about e-bike ridership on trails, and I'm just going to throw it out there. Why don't you reach out to Bicycle Colorado if that's something that you'd like to have more of a conversation about. And with that, we are really eager to hear your 2023 success stories. We are confident that this has been a big year for e-bikes, and next year it's going to get even bigger. So just want to thank everyone who is out there. And I know we are all conscientious when we're on our bikes. I'm sure we're also conscientious when we are behind the wheel. And the road is only a safe place if people treat it like that. So let's get out there. Let's be safe. Thank you for joining us. And let's get more people on e-bikes across Colorado and across the country. Thank you, everyone.